the Ponzi will break. They still will have to peg to gold. The inflationary systems cannot be restarted like that because they require trust, and the trust will be completely gone. And a lot of people are going to realize they're very, very poor, and I don't think they're going to be in the mood for, stable coins, things like that. I don't think it's going to work.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for September 29th through October 6th, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, 1 ounce gold Philharmonics are just $75 over spot. Next, 90% silver US half dollars are just 69 cents over spot per ounce. And finally, the silver Australian Year of the Snake coin for 2025 is just $5.99 over spot. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have this popular returning guest. Phil Lowe is the founder of the Bitter Draught. It's a show that tries to make economic principles accessible to everyone, which I appreciate, and many of our subscribers and viewers do as well. Phil, thank you for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
My pleasure, Dunagun. Happy to be on again.
I should let everyone know today we're recording this is Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. Glad you can make it on. We're going to do something a little different this time. We've put out a call for viewers' questions ahead of your arrival here. We've got a boatload of them. We won't have time for all of them, but I'll pitch some of them to you and to see what we can get in terms of answers that would be specifically answering the questions that our viewers have been asking, because they look to you for a simple, easy to understand explanations of things that can otherwise be daunting for them to wrap their heads around. There's one here from MIK1967 who says, why are the general public so asleep to the rising price of gold and silver?
Well, that's actually a very good question. I was asleep myself until COVID. Once COVID hit and the money print hit, I said, the world is completely shut down. The stock market should not be going up right now. But the stock market just was going up as if we was the biggest party we've ever been in. And my Austrian training said, even if I hadn't put all the pieces together at that time, my Austrian training said something is definitely wrong. And so over the course of the next few years, I've educated myself, and now I'm educating others. And the answer that I would have for that question is that part of a Ponzi scheme, and the Federal Reserve note is no doubt in my mind a Ponzi scheme. Part of a Ponzi scheme is a mass psychosis of everyone involved in the Ponzi scheme. That's precisely how they work. Somebody comes out with something of absolutely no value, convinces people that it has value, and then they start pumping it to their friends and their friends and their friends and their friends, and the Ponzi scheme grows at an exponential rate until it blows up. The initial buy-in, right? In 1971, when Nixon, took us off the fixed gold standard onto a floating gold standard, and then Volcker had to, and that was gonna blow up in 1979 until Volcker raised rates. They looked like if you had bought silver, and when silver went up from $1 to $50 in 1979, and you jumped in on $48 thinking, oh my goodness, the dollar, the Federal Reserve note's done. We're back on a silver standard. And then, 6 months later, it's down at $1 again. You got blown out of the water. And I think a lot of people, especially people that were in the sound money community, probably thought that the Federal Reserve had done something to conquer natural money. If I was engaged in monetary transactions at that time, I would say, wow, it looked as if Paul Volcker conquered natural money. Natural money was trying to rise up, and they did something, and now everyone just wants dollars. And it looks like they were right after all. The Keynesians were right after all. And it's taken, what was that, 1980? So it's taken 45 years for this process to really get reversed. I mean, there were episodes of reversion, 2000, 2008, 2019, but now it's really looks like it's getting reversed, and I think people are going to start rushing back to natural money again. But just to answer that question, I have talked to people in my family, and these are not tie-dye wearing, kumbaya global, communists. These are very conservative. You describe these people as extremely conservative, but they don't understand that gold is money. The Federal Reserve, to them, the dollar is a note of production value of America, and we're an industrial superpower, and therefore, the dollar is what it buys in America, and everyone wants the dollars because they want to buy American stuff, and they're just not persuaded. They trying to convince them that something wrong was done to our money is like trying to convince a brick wall. Now, some people can be convinced and some can't. But to answer your question of why why the general public is asleep, it appears to be some sort of mass psychosis where we've just convinced ourselves that this was so, and it will be, reality always wins in the end. It's natural law, but people can live on fake things for a long time.
The need for anyone to have a reliable way of measuring things that need to be measured is a big deal. I mean, even the Bible talks about truthful weights and measures, just weights and measures, and fixing of the scales as being an abomination, a crime against humanity. As a scientist by education and my career, and an engineer, you always have to start, if you're going to start trying to solve a problem, you always decide what's your frame of reference, and what coordinates are you going to use, and what measurement system are you going to use, because otherwise you can't talk about anything that's quantifiable if you don't agree on those terms. And yet we don't have the reason. We naturally want that, and we assume that that's what we have is a reliable system of measurement. But in the dollar, we have something that's basically monopoly money, and that's being debased, and it's like a rubber band measuring stick, and it causes all kinds of. Everybody has the old saying, a buck ain't worth what it used to be, but they don't think about, well then why the heck why are we talking about, and oh, by the way, how am I being stolen from and impoverished by that fact in many ways? My savings, my earnings, and my retirement being stolen from me. And anything that I say is going up is not really going up. It's the measure going down, and I should run away and avoid, like the plague, trying to store any value, any of my hard work, the fruit of my labor, in something that's being debased. But you're right. It's like we're all instinctively trusting in a reality that makes sense, and we couldn't imagine a world in which those who are the keepers of the officialdom would all be acting like everything's fine. The emperor has clothes on, so I guess he does, even though we all feel that something's very, very wrong. I just saw an infographic that was made by a viewer who sent it in. Maybe I'll be able to include this in the video if I get his permission. But it shows, you buy a house back in like 1970, and here's what it cost, and now your house is supposedly worth this. And it shows, well, if it was valued in silver, it's still worth about the same. But it's in these funny little Federal Reserve notes. And now they say, ha, you've had a gain. We get a cut of that gain in form of tax. So there's a lot more to be said about that. We've got another question here actually, this one was from the same viewer who asks a follow-up question. Will politicians try to blame the collapse of the financial system on stackers hoarding precious metals?
Possibly. The problem is there's so few of us now. I mean, it's not like before where there was a widespread movement. We don't have that much. I think, how many people are stacking gold in America? 0.5%, 1%?
Yeah, the statistic that Rick Rule quotes is that of investments, of the entire set of investments, less than 1/2% are invested in either physical precious metals or precious metals related stocks. So that's not where people have, 99.5% of investments are not in that. Yeah.
Not to mention the retort is, well, what do you care? The dollar is no longer attached to gold and hasn't been for 50 years, right? So if the dollar is its own unit, then what does it matter what the price of gold is? How did we do anything wrong? But I don't know. That's a great question. They could say speculator, that's what Nixon said in 1971 was we have to protect the dollar against, the speculators, the people who think the dollar doesn't actually have the gold behind it. I don't think it'll really even matter that much because the people who have the gold will be the ones making the decisions, and the politicians will be coming to them saying, can I have some of that gold? And I'll do whatever you want for it.
On the that's one side of the coin that you and, for example, our good friend and mutual friend, Rafi Farber, talk about, is this enviable position that those who own real tangible assets, such as precious metals, will find themselves in after a collapse of the Ponzi scheme, this false monetary framework that the West has been deluding its people on, and that has kind of become this mass formation psychosis that you talked about. There's a flip side of that some suggest, and that is that it may not be such an easy road to walk if a new system is imposed by force or by some kind of carrot and a stick that says you really need to use the new thing. Samsung Apple 2141 says, ask about the total surveillance and total control coming, where we would have stable coins, CBDCs that will allow no buying, no selling, total control. How could we be going back to gold and silver?
Those will fail completely. If you go to a store, let's say you go to buy some meat, and you go to pay, and your card goes ding, 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 ding. Oh, done again. You spoke out against the government last week, so no meat for you, or your meat ration's cut in half. And why would the butcher want this meat? Because he's going to go down to the pub and it's going to go ding, 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 ding. Butcher, you've already had 2 pints of beer. You can't have any more. Why would he want that? So if you show up with a silver coin and say, look, I will give you this silver coin and you give me some meat, he will take it, because he can go down to the bar and say, I will give you a silver coin, you give me some beers. That's just it. The market, people mistake the market as that is somehow controlled by, from on high. It is not. The people on high, our technical overlords, are parasites. They're trying to siphon off the wealth of the free market, but they can't. If they try and control it to that level, it's just going to collapse on them. In fact, already, in England, they just came out with a digital ID, or they announced a digital ID requirement, and the prime minister his popularity is at like 7%. So the choice is either go full, mask off, no more elections, Gestapo boots, or you're going to lose. You're going to get absolutely trounced in the next election. And I don't think the former is going to work. It's definitely not going to work in America. We've got 400 million guns, so that's good luck to anyone who tries to do that.
I guess the counter example would be the fact that so many people voluntarily comply with the IRS and pay their taxes and pay their so-called capital gains they're actually false gains, illusory gains, fictitious gains that happen because of the debasement of the currency, and then just sit by there and watch month after month as their purchasing power of their savings and checking accounts dwindle, and don't realize I'm being stolen from. I'm being impoverished. There's a thief that's sneaking into my bank every month and stealing out of my account, and I just go along with it. So it seems that we have a very clear and present example of mass compliance with an extremely unjust system. So I don't know how we can say that people won't comply with an unjust system when we already are.
One of the effects of the Ponzi scheme is what's called, what I believe it was Mises called the illusion of prosperity. It might have been Hayek, but I believe it was Mises. He called it the illusion of prosperity. So because number go up, because because your job gives you $1 raise, and because your house, the dollar value of your house is going up, people feel as if they are wealthier than they were before, even though the opposite is in fact true. In fact, over a long period of time, people do sit back and say, why do I feel poor? However, during the process of inflation, people in each individual moment in time, every time you get a promotion at work, or you get a cost of living adjustment at work or whatever, or every time your house value goes up before the tax man comes to take a big chunk of it, you think, oh, I have become wealthier than I was before. So as long as that mass psychosis is going on, as long as that Ponzi scheme is working, people will put up with an income tax, marginal, what did you call it? Capital gains tax. All these people will put up with that because the number's going up and they're still being fooled by it. The Ponzi will break, and we're going to have to revalue to gold. Now, whether the question is this a situation where the gold is locked away in big vaults, big government-run vaults, and we can't get at it, but here's this paper that says it represents that gold, and don't worry your pretty little heads about how much gold is actually in there. They still will have to peg to gold. They won't be able to inflate any. The inflation will be dead. the inflationary systems cannot be restarted like that because they require trust, and the trust will be completely gone. So the question then is, on a non-inflationary system, when everyone realizes how poor they are, and I'm worried we are actually quite poor. I think we can rebuild. I don't think we're destined to starve to death. But I think the aftermath of the blow, the crash is going to be absolutely enormous. And a lot of people are going to realize they're very, very poor. And I don't think they're going to be in the mood for, stable coins, things like that. I don't think it's going to work.
A related question is it possible that even after a fiat currency collapse, the masses will still not understand that gold is money?
I don't think so. I think they will, just because the people that have gold are going to be buying houses by the city block. So people are going to say, geez, that looks like it buys a lot of stuff. I should probably get some. I should probably go work and get some. I think the evidence of gold being money is going to expose itself, and silver and copper. The monetary metals are going to come back to life in ways we haven't seen, probably, I would say, since 1800s, maybe before. When was the last large banking crisis that was allowed to resolve itself?
Oh boy, that would be a long time ago.
So it would be that. I mean, no interference.
Certainly. I mean, before the global financial crisis of 2007, 8, 9. We were told that those who were in the inner rooms were saying we were staring into the abyss, and if we hadn't taken the actions that we had taken within a few hours, the entire global financial system would have come crumbling down. So they told us we're going to have to use $400 billion to bail it out. Okay, by the next morning, it's $800 billion. It turns out it was $16 trillion and counting. There's still numbers are out. People are throwing around how much actually got sent to all internationally and everything to keep the edifice afloat. But
This next one will be bigger. I mean, it'll be much bigger, much bigger. I mean, who knows? The number even starts to lose reality at that point. It doesn't even matter.
Here's a interesting question from Stan Miravanov, 9447. If the world had stayed on the gold standard, never abused it, never left it, would we have created more prosperity, meaning more homes, cars, companies, and peace worldwide compared to now?
Absolutely. More and much, much better. You can look at I've said this before, look at the houses we were building on the gold standard, the 1890s to the 1910s. Look at the Art Deco. I posted a picture on Twitter of what a train car looked like in 1904. It was a 1904 train. It was absolutely beautiful. I mean, brass railings, oak benches with, upholstery. And this was just, this was a light rail, It was to get from Cincinnati, suburban Cincinnati into the downtown or whatever. I don't remember what city it was. And the ceilings were hand painted. The ceilings were hand painted, and just everything. And the houses look the same. Look at a Victorian house. They are absolutely gorgeous. In fact, I saw one. The door, you open the door, and the inside of the door was ornamented, because they didn't want it to be, when you open the door, they want it to be pleasing to the eye, that you're looking at the inside, the width of the door. They did not want that to be just plain, So you can extrapolate that to absolutely everything. Not only that, we would have had almost no wars on a gold standard, or far fewer wars. There's still, obviously there were still wars on a gold standard, but especially for a democratic republic, which we claim to be, if people knew the actual the actual cost of what a war costs, we would have, revolted a long time ago. If Nixon had said, yeah, the Vietnam War is costing each of you, 40% of your salary in America, they would have said, absolutely not. That's outrageous. For that, no way. So we would have lived in much more peace. I'm not saying we would never have had a war, but we would have lived much more in peace. We would have much more prosperity. If you do the math of what a technical worker made in the let me rephrase this. A industrial worker in New York City made something like, and this is like just off the boat, you just got off of Ellis Island, your cousin Yaroslav, hooks you up with at a shop in New York, and you start industrial output. Their wage paid in silver is the equivalent of like $90,000 today. And that's I'm telling you, that's right off the boat, speaks no English. Here's a hammer, here's a nail, get to work, the telegraph operators were making, in that, that's the equivalent of like a computer engineer or something, $200,000 a year in today's dollars, because they were being paid in ounces of silver and gold. So you can just, and there was no taxes, there were some taxes, but much, much lower taxes. So imagine you're making, $200,000 and you keep all of it. What you can do with that wealth. So yes, absolutely. And when we go back onto a gold standard, and hopefully we stay there for many generations to come, I predict the prosperity that we once enjoyed will absolutely return. I am not despite my fear of the crash, and I fear it every day. I wake up saying, "Oh, is today the day?" But I remain wildly optimistic of the medium future within my life. Within a few years of my life, I think we'll be back to prosperity.
There's a couple of different questioners who ask about vault storage and the safety of that. Scott Woodward, 8313, says, which depository in the U.S. do you think is the safest? Joseph Fiore says, do you think storage facilities will be safe and in jurisdictions such as Switzerland for gold and silver private vault storage?
So I'm a little bit biased because I'm public. I have all of my gold vaulted. I don't have any personal possession. And, I know there's if you don't hold it, you don't own it crowd, but go on a YouTube channel like Liberty Finance, where you get 30,000 plus views, and then come talk to me about privacy and protecting your gold. So I can't keep anything near me. I do have plenty of base metals, which I will send to any intruders at high speed, but I do not have any precious metals on me. As far as vaulting goes, I don't have any particular vault to recommend. I would suggest jurisdiction-wise, if you're going to stay in the U.S., you probably don't want the Delaware repository. That's right next to D.C. and New York, and it's got a lot of gold in it. And if I was a grabby government and I was to seize a vault, I would seize the Delaware repository, because I think that's where the COMEX is, isn't it?
There are a number of different COMEX warehouses in New York and surrounding. The one point about a depository I would absolutely and emphatically exhort people to find out, and that is your storage allocated, segregated, and audited? Because if it isn't your private personal property that's kept separate from anyone else's, in other words, if it's commingled or pooled, or if you can't say, I'm going to come pick up my stuff or send me my stuff without paying some huge upcharge and waiting as long as it takes for them to actually find some product that they can actually ship you, because there are some depositories that tout free or almost free storage fees, which sounds too good to be true. But one of the ways that they can do that is they have some scrap metals that are there, or stuff that's going to be recycled, or working inventory for various industry, and then they'll just say, well, you have ownership in ounces of that. You have so many ounces of these belong to you, or how so many grams of this gold belongs to you. But you can't go pick it up. It's not your personal private property. They would, if you say, well, ship me my gold, they say, whoa. Okay, we owe you 1,800 grams of gold or something, but we have to convert that into actual coins. And so that's going to take 6 weeks, and we're going to have to charge you an upcharge for the premium difference between this generic stuff that you have an interest in versus what we can send you. So be very careful. If you want your stuff to be yours, make sure that the vault is giving you storage or selling you storage that's segregated, allocated, and audited.
So what I did, I had my bars, I got all serialized bars, and I had them email me the serial numbers of all my bars. And at some point, I'm going to run a test where I just say, send me bar XYZ123, and see if I get that exact bar. I haven't done it yet, but that is my plan. If you're going to vault in the U.S., I would pick a state, maybe like Florida or Texas, that the states that's the most likely to tell the feds to go shove it if they go and try and grab their repositories. If you're worried about seizure, Cayman Islands, Switzerland, those are probably wherever, it's Monaco, the sunny places for shady people, wherever the warlords of Africa or Zelensky, wherever he puts his money, that's probably a good place, because it's going to be in a country that doesn't ask too many questions. Yep. You might want to do it there. The only problem is liquidity. I mean, you're going to have trouble getting the physical money if it's in the Cayman Islands. If you need the physical money, it'll have to be converted back into dollars and sent to you. It'll be converted into whatever the new dollar is and sent to you that way. if you have it in Texas, even if you're not, I don't live in Texas, but I could theoretically make the trip, I guess. I don't know how much things are going to break down, but I think, there's pluses and minuses to vaulting within the U.S. or without the U.S. I don't predict massive seizures of private vaulted gold because, like I said before, in 1933, everybody had a little bit of gold. Now only the rich people and a few libertarians have all the gold. The rich people that are the demonic overlords or related to the demonic overlords, and a few libertarians have all the gold. So they're going to be seizing the gold from their own cadre. I don't think they're going to do that.
This next one has a little bit to do with market behavior, a lot to do with human emotional crowd behavior, which you've touched on before. This is RW says, I totally understand the silver cup and handle and momentum analysis, etc. But one question I think your listeners would want to know, which is why I'm bothering you, is what happens if after silver moonshots accounting for inflation to where it did in 1980 or 2011, does it drop again and form another 50-year cup and handle, or are extraneous forces and supply and demand going to give this new moonshot target a floor there? In other words, is there an exit time because it would be overpriced at some point? Would listeners want to roll back to gold at a point given the proper ratio? I think these types of questions are what people are wanting to know for a long game view.
Okay, that's an excellent question, and that has to do with the monetization of silver. Silver is a money, but it has been dormant as a money for quite some time now. The process to start demonetizing silver was in 1873, and it was completed in 1964, right? Was that the year
1965 was the first year they removed the silver from the coinage.
Okay, it was completed in 1965. They can never take away the monetization of it. They can dormant it by offering alternatives, which is credit notes that they've been offering before. So to answer the question, how long does silver stay money, really depends on how well credit is trusted on the other side of the crash. Now, initially, with the initial stages of the crash, silver in any form is going to be fully monetized. So you're talking, if you have an ounce of a silver necklace, you're probably going to be able to get an ounce of whatever an ounce of silver will buy. If you have private rent, because the government hasn't made silver currency since 1965. So before the moon landing, right? Or no, I'm not going to get into the moon landing. Your clientele probably have different views on that. Competing views on the moon landing. But before the moon landing was announced, silver was fully monetized, was a currency in circulation. Sorry. So the last time we had silver quarters and silver dimes and silver half dollars was 1965. Because of that, we're going to have to use whatever silver we have lying around post-crash. Private rounds are fun. That's why, some people say, you have to have constitutional. I don't think so. I think private rounds will do just fine because there's no alternative. If somebody's, and some of the hoarders, some of the people are saying, well, I'm not going to take anything that's not constitutional silver. That's fine. Maybe you won't, but your starving neighbor sure will. When they need food to eat and you say, I've got silver, it's a private round, but it is silver, it will absolutely work. If you understand what money is, you understand that silver in any monetary form, which is a uniform weight with the weight and purity stamped on it, that will work as a money. Now, in the initial aftermath post-crash, the mints are going to start minting in silver again. They're going to have no choice. The government's going to have to start, minting actual silver coinage again. And at that point, the previous silver, I think even the constitutional silver is probably going to go dormant as a money again, because people are going to say, well, I want the new silver dollar. I don't want the old. I certainly don't want the private round, and I probably don't want the constitutional silver as for monetary transactions. I just want, I want whatever the new coins that are coming out as. And people, the government will probably say, hey, give us your old silver and we'll just turn it into coins for you and we'll give you new silver back. And the question is, how long does this last? If the credit is, and this is assuming a true free market, purely free market. I'm not talking about government intervention or government trying to get us away from silver again. If the credit is trusted, so everyone absolutely trusts the credit, and the gold is honestly, I'm not going to say Federal Reserve note, the new dollar, whatever the new dollar is honestly backed by gold, and everyone trusts it, and credit's working fine, then people may not need silver anymore because gold credits are more efficient than silver. So we may see silver go dormant as a money just by a property of the free market. However, we may also not see that trust develop. And silver really is the money of like, if you want to buy bread or you want to buy meat or you want to buy shoes, you really want to have silver for that. So silver is the retail transactional money. And if the gold credits are not trusted by and large by the populace, which I think we'll probably not see credit trusted for decades after this one. I think we're going to be paying our electric bills to a meter man who comes by and collects silver. I think it's going to be that. So I think we're going to see monetized silver for decades. But we may not, and I'm not an expert on, I am an expert, but I cannot see into the future if what levels the credit's going to be trusted by the population or not. So if it's not trusted, then silver is going to stay fully monetized, 16-to-1, 20-to-1 ratio with gold for the foreseeable future. If the credit is trusted, silver might go dormant again.
We've got a question here, and you just touched on it. It says, what do you foresee? This is Matt asks, what gold-silver ratio do you foresee at the end of the end game?
Okay, so the Old Testament ratio is something like 16-to-1. I would absolutely start if you are a stacker, a silver stacker particularly, I would start disgorging your hoards at 30-to-1. And if it hits 15-to-1 or goes below it, I would go out and buy houses by the city block again with your silver stacks. Just buy whatever assets you can at a rush. What will it stabilize at? 20-to-1. For truly honest money, this was the problem in 1873. It has to have a floating exchange rate. You can't have a silver dollar and a gold dollar. One of them must be a dollar, and the other one can be a unit of currency, but it has to be separate, and there has to be a floating exchange rate between the two. Because the problem in the 1870s and before was that people would take out a loan in gold. So I would borrow $500 from you in gold, and then I would use that money to go dig up a bunch of silver, and then I would pay that loan back in silver. And because I had extracted silver from the ground, there was now more silver in the world than there was before. And so the gold-silver ratio dipped down, but I owed you $500. So I just showed up with $500 of freshly minted silver and said, here you go. But the gold value had gone up relative to the silver value. So the two have to float against each other. And you can't have a fixed, what was it fixed? It was $20.67. Is that correct?
$20.67 was the official rate for gold until FDR forced everyone or tried to coerce people to surrender their gold.
Any fixed rate will cause a problem, and this is the problem. This is a problem that requires like 110 IQ to understand. It's slightly above average IQ to understand that it must be a floating exchange rate between currencies. So you always get this midwit government bureaucrat who says, we just fixed the gold-silver rate. Why are we letting it float against each other? Just fix them, and then we'll have this problem. We'll just have a single thing called a dollar. But when you do that, you create all kinds of problems with exchanging the two currencies. In fact, whichever one, because of Gresham's law, whichever one is more valued gets hoarded, and whichever one is less valued gets spent. So you automatically will drive one of those currencies into everyone's basement, or one of those monies. People will either hoard silver and spend gold, or they'll hoard gold and spend silver, depending on which one is dear relative to the other. So if you let them float, then they'll both spend. But there's always going to be some midwit who's going to ruin the economic system by just I'm just going to fix that one thing, and then
This is a very common question, and I don't expect you to say you have an authoritative answer, but the viewers are curious about your thoughts on this. This is Bill M. from Florida. What will crypto's role be in the reset?
None.
Could you expand on that?
Crypto is an inflation receptacle. So people are taking their freshly printed Federal Reserve notes, and they're thinking they're putting them into a safe haven, a safe haven of this cryptocurrency, and that drives the price up because somebody has bought some. So when you buy something, it goes up. Now, when you sell something, the price goes right back down. So everyone is just going to go and sell all their cryptocurrency. At some point, someone is going to start selling them. The price is going to go down, and people are going to panic right on out of crypto. There is nothing there. In the tulip mania of the 1600s, you at least got a tulip for your troubles. Now you'd get nothing. Cryptocurrency is a speculation on the value of nothing.
This is an interesting discussion point because it seems to be so hotly held by participants on different perspectives of that. It's certainly of great interest to our viewers and subscribers, at least of which because they are distrustful of the fiat currency. They have reason for understanding the history of sound money, and they're trying to understand if competing currencies in general can be viable. Then is this something that they should be paying attention to? One of the points I think you had made in the past was that until the end of the gold standard, there were different currencies all over the world, but they were all just different instantiations that were backed by gold. That's what Rafi and you have continued to remind us all.
Yep. Money is a commodity. Money is, by definition, is the most liquid commodity in a market, and that is gold, silver, and copper. The currency is just a unit of a money. It's not a point system. Cryptocurrency is not a money because it's not a commodity. It's not related to a commodity. It has nothing to do with commodities. It's just a point system. Hey, give me get what's Bitcoin now? $110,000. Give me $110,000 and I will give you 1 point. Point of what? There's nothing there. I cannot stress enough, do not invest, do not get into crypto. And this was a lesson I learned. I learned, when cryptos first came out, and I wasn't thinking very hard about this, this is neat. Oh, I'll get into it, sure. And I bought a Bitcoin for $50, and then it went up to $15,000. And I said, well, I'm going to cash in my winnings now. Now, could I have held on to $110,000? Sure, maybe I even should have. But as soon as I understood that gold is money, I said, this is not this other stuff is not money. This is just a speculation. Just because the dollar value of something is increasing and even increasing rapidly is not indication of anything. And that includes gold and silver as well. Gold and silver just happen to actually be money. And this will be truly revealed at the end of the dollar collapse. But because the dollar is going up, because Bitcoin is going up in dollar terms right now, signifies no protection whatsoever that it won't go right back down. Beanie Babies have done this. Magic the Gathering cards have done this. There's lots of things that you would not think have a lot of intrinsic value. There's no such thing as intrinsic value because everything's subjective. But if everything is subjective, Phil, the counterpoint would be, doesn't that mean that if everyone wants Bitcoin, that it in fact does have value? The answer is no, because it's not a thing. It doesn't exist. There's nothing there. It's like a cup of air. Does a cup of air have value? I mean, I guess if you're, even air has if I can't breathe, then a cup of air has a lot of value to me. But if air is in abundance and I just have an invisible cup of air right here, then no, it has no value. Likewise does Bitcoin. Bitcoin, I swear there's nothing there. It's just to speculate. It's a game. It's a monetary game where everyone's putting in dollars, and at some point someone's going to start cashing those dollars in, and they're going to go do something else with them.
Phil, you write and publish primarily video forms of explanatory topics that are introductory level or beyond an introductory level on many different related topics of monetary and finance. Where can people find your work?
Sure. You can find me at The Bitter Draught on Rumble and YouTube. That's with the old spelling of DRAUGHT. And you could find me on Twitter at The Bitter Draught, and you can email me directly at thebitterdraught@gmail.com.
We've been speaking with Phil Lowe, the founder of The Bitter Draught. Phil, as always, thank you for joining us for this engaging question and answer session, being a good sport about that, and being willing to take all these pitches thrown at you here on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you. My pleasure, Diane.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for September 29th through October 6th, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, 1 ounce gold Philharmonics are just $75 over spot. Next, 90% silver US half dollars are just 69 cents over spot per ounce. And finally, the silver Australian Year of the Snake coin for 2025 is just $5.99 over spot. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.